Hello and welcome to another episode of the Geotechnical Engineering Podcast, a podcast focused on helping geotechnical engineers stay up to date with technical trends in the field. I'm your host, Jared Green, and I've practiced as a geotechnical engineer for over 18 years. And in addition to practicing engineering, I enjoy mentoring young engineers and first-generation college students. I focused on helping to increase the number of pre-college students that are interested in STEAM majors and fields. By STEAM, I mean science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. In this episode of the Geotechnical Engineering Podcast, I'll be talking to Art Alzamora, who's not only a principal and vice president at Langan Engineering and Environmental Services, but he's also a good friend. We started our careers and grown our careers together at this firm. He will be talking to us about his career advancements, and he'll also be talking about how he attacks his day and what it means to grow a team at a company. Art has over 17 years of experience in geotechnical engineering, specializing in aspects related to geotechnical engineering, such as design of excavation support systems and foundation design, just to name a few. He currently serves on the board of directors of ASCE Mentoring, as well as a handful of charity organizations as well. Arthur is the past president of the Metropolitan Section of the American Society of Civil Engineers, and he's served on the executive committee for the New York chapter of the American Council of Engineering Companies. He also serves on numerous committees for the American Council of Engineering Companies. Arthur has served as an adjunct faculty member at Manhattan College and has also been fortunate to be recognized by Engineering News Record and American Society of Civil Engineering with industry-related awards, and is proud to be a part of the amazing team at Langan Engineering and Environmental Services. And with that, let's jump right into our conversation with Art Alzamora. All right, welcome to another episode of the Geotechnical Engineering Podcast. Art, glad to have you here. How you feeling, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Jared. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we already went through your bio, which is indeed impressive. But just take a few minutes to just walk us through, our listeners that are here in your own words. What's it like, a typical day for you at Langan? What is it that you do for the firm?
So I would say my typical day now, as opposed to what it was maybe 10, 15 years ago, is drastically different, right? I would say years ago, I would have woke up early, went to a job site, started working on a job site, things like that. So nowadays I spend a lot of my time, especially this day and age, on a lot of conference calls, a lot of Zoom calls like this one, a lot of web shares, a lot of items where I'm answering, phones, not just from clients and say agency folks, but also a lot of my own team, where I'm having almost every morning having like a daily debrief with most of my team, project managers in different disciplines, geotechnical as well, and just kind of go through that. I'd say a majority of my time now is spent at home, as opposed to where I do go into the office. We go in every other week. We have different, so I'm in one of the pods that goes in 1 week, and it's good because I get a chance to go visit job sites and go around. So depending on if I'm in the city for the week or not, I may actually be popping around a few different job sites and checking things out and checking on some staff and seeing how things are going. So
Interesting. So a lot changed, I guess, with the recent promotion coupled with the pandemic. So it sounds like
right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's been great because when I live outside the city, as most of the people do in tri-state area. So a lot of times when I am working remotely, I'm cutting out, a substantial amount of commuting time that I could be working, reviewing reports, working on other parts of projects and things like that. So I enjoy both. I enjoy being on job sites, being in person, and I also enjoy being at home to get things done. So.
Awesome. Do you feel like you're working more or less now that you're, we're still in pandemic, right? You feel like you're working more or less these days?
I feel like I'm working a lot more. I think I feel like the hours are a little longer than, this is unprecedented time. So it's on calls for unprecedented measures. So there are times where you got to take calls late, take calls early. It's definitely different. It's different, right? Like when you were in the city every day, we'd be walking around to project sites, project meetings, and you spend a lot of time commuting to in-person meetings. Now you can line up a meeting one right after the other, and it seems like there's more time in the day now, if
Yeah,
that makes any sense. I'm sure
that's awesome.
I'm sure you feel the same way at times. So
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's fascinating how much you can get done, right? And it's
right.
fascinating how much still doesn't get done at the end of the day.
I stopped writing those lists, man. It's I don't want to be reminded.
No, you're absolutely right. Now, when you think it's kind of hard to say it, but if you go post-pandemic, do you see some of the ways that you're working still trickling over to when things are back to whatever that new normal looks like?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if I pull back the curtain a little bit, I think there's going to be some good aspects that come out of this pandemic from a remote working opportunity. I think it's going to give people opportunities to work in other areas of the country and not necessarily be present in those areas.
Okay.
Um, I will say Jared, my wife, and my wife worked with us for a little while before she went to a different engineering firm at the time. But when we first started having children, she was working remotely a few days of the week. So our family was already accustomed to working remote for a very long time. So a lot of this stuff wasn't anything new to us. We already had some good things. So I think as long as folks can remain productive and actually remain happy at what they're doing, I think we can find this hybrid in person and at home type work environment be great for folks.
That's awesome.
Um, I,
That's
I mean,
awesome.
I've been able to do things that I never thought I would, like on occasion cook breakfast for the family and kids. And we're a family of early risers, so
Yeah.
it's not uncommon at 6 a.m. at our house. Everybody is wide awake and ready to take on the day. The problem is school doesn't start till 9.
Yeah.
So if they're working remotely, you got to find 3 hours of activities before because we're not turning on TVs and stuff. So I think that's something that we working in the tri-state area, I think most people listening to this, and yourself included, see these shows on TV where the father's cooking breakfast for the family before work, and I was like,
Yeah.
what? Like, that's crazy. Like,
Yeah. It's like, is that a
so?
thing?
But let's just talk about the health and well-being of that. Is fantastic. It feels great. Make some pancakes and be on a conference call by 7:30 a.m. and
Yeah.
it's like I've tackled a couple different tasks for today already. So it's pretty tremendous. Like I think those are some of the good byproducts of what this has brought on. So.
That's cool. That's cool. So we're kind of living out the life work balance, as I understand it's called
Oh
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
is that actually a thing? I didn't
That's the
know.
thing.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
yeah.
All right, cool. So engineering, how did Art Alzamora end up in engineering? And then how did you end up in geotechnical engineering? Were you born and you said, I want to be an engineer when I grow up? Like, how did you get here?
So it's funny, as you get older, I'm sure you agree with this. You kind of reflect on how you got to where you're at and what are the very slight decisions you've made in your life that led you down this way. It's not, there's very little slight left or right turn, and next thing you know, you end up at a path. And I would say at a very, very young age, my mother had mentioned to me about engineering. I'd say very young, probably like first or second grade, because I was good at math, right?
Okay.
And the typical response from people, you should be an engineer. And even at that age, I had no idea what they were. Thought they drove trains, which they do, but not our types of engineers. And then I remember as a kid, like going throughout the city and seeing bridges, Brooklyn Bridge, George Washington Bridge, and going through. I was always fascinated with tunnel, like just always. My mother would be like, "We're going under the water," and I'd be like, "Oh, this is amazing," And in my mind, I'm picturing this like it's from the movie Jaws, and we're walking through this glass tube, like suspended in the water. And I just all these sort of things you start to put together. But for years, all through school, I would say, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to be an engineer, not really knowing what they were. And as I got older, I started to learn a little bit more. I took some architecture classes in high school, learning to draw and, buildings and isometric views. And I started really enjoy that stuff, but I wouldn't fit the mold of an architect in my mind. I wasn't nearly as creative as I believed. And then I would say all through school, I just want to be a structural engineer. I really want to do structures, and I love steel and concrete. And then I think it was my maybe sophomore year to junior year range, I took an internship at a geotechnical firm and worked in a geotechnical lab for an entire summer, and just absolutely fell in love with it. Just really enjoyed it. I just understood it better than I thought I would have. It just made sense. You know, sometimes you sit in classes and things just don't click. Those are the sort of things that really clicked. It just made sense, like soil particles, soil interaction, that sort of thing just kind of made sense to me. And then I started spending a lot of time on construction sites. I mean, I had some internships before that, so it was good. I knew what I didn't want to do,
Yeah.
which was I spent a lot of time, you know, figuring out, even in high school, working at engineering firms, trying to understand what I didn't want to do. So by the time I graduated school, I had, you know, probably close to 3 years of real experience in geotechnical engineer, and had done 2 or 3 other engineering disciplines I knew I didn't want to do. And then you start to get back to that full circle.
Mm-hmm.
I get to my point where I think about it now, and I start remembering, you know, sitting on a construction site with my father, and, you know, picking up soil and crushing it in my hands, and, you know, playing on the piles that a lot of kids do. But I always remember, like, just having, there's a reason why those memories stick in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So when I still find myself to this day going on job sites and picking up soil in my hand and crushing it, and
Yeah.
just like, yeah, you know, now I obviously have a different understanding of why the soil is staying clumped
Yeah.
together, and you know, things like that, and I'm maybe feeling a little more granular. But really, it goes back to like life full circle, like thinking back to a kid playing, and, you know, when my father's working on an excavator or a backhoe, and you know, watching soil being piled and stacked along the side, and then, you know, spending a lot of time doing that, and really coming full circle and realizing geotech is, I get it, right? Or it
Yeah.
gets me, maybe is the way I should say it. Like, it gets me.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of how I got to that, right? It's not, I wouldn't say it was an easy, like, I went in school as a freshman and said this one, I didn't even know what a geotechnical engineer was,
Yeah.
you know, until later in school. Actually, probably when I started applying for internships in geotechnical engineering is when I really got a really good understanding of what it was. You know, you took the classes, but I understood what it was. So
That's
it's
pretty
pretty
cool.
tremendous.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like the exposure was important, so you know what an engineer is, and then
Right.
just tangibly touching the soil, and that kind of gets you to where you are now. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
So
So, Art, you've had a pretty successful career, and I say you're having a pretty successful career. You're definitely not done. You got a lot more wind in your sails. But you think about it, you're a principal in Langan. You're one of the office leaders in our New York City office. But what would you tell the listeners about career growth? What has worked for you, or what has been working for you when you think about, you know, when you started? I remember when you started at Langan, and
right.
come a long way. But what kind of things do you give our listeners?
So, you know, I would say, and this is, you know, in my opinion, when we were coming up through school, I remember hearing a lot of people saying, to be successful, you have to switch jobs. You have to switch jobs. You have to switch jobs. Like, you want that next job, you got to always be looking for the next best thing, and always looking to expand, expand, expand. And I would say, and at the time, I felt like, and this is, you know, years ago, they would say, oh, you don't want to stay at one place for too long. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself and that sort of thing. And I would say, kind of done the complete opposite. I look at a firm like ours, and I see a lot of the senior leadership has all started and had their career all through Langan, and it's been great. So I look at, one of my things I think about is, you know, having that, you know, dedication to get to be the best that I can in the firm that I'm at, and really be allowed to grow has been fantastic. And I think, you know, not putting myself in a situation where I'm always looking, you know, the old saying is always the case, where the grass is always greener. Folks always look like, hey, what's always great? Well, if you take that mentality with every aspect of your life, then you're just going to be always searching around. And it's not called settling. You're not settling for anything. You're just being happy in the moment. And I think about those things, and I think the culmination of that, what it comes down to me, is I never started my career as a job. I always took it as a career. I always took it in my mind as, this is my career. This is what I want to do. There obviously there are times, like there are in every aspect of someone's life, that, is this the right decision for me? Should I be doing this? Am I a better fit somewhere else? Am I the puzzle piece that makes this, a complete puzzle? And yeah, I had all those exact same thoughts and ideas, and we're like, oh, maybe I'd be better off doing this. But I don't want to say, it wasn't like I stuck it out. It was just like, no, I there's nothing wrong with reevaluating it, and continuing on the way that I felt that I should, and really have a very good mindset ahead of me, have like a good 3-5 year plan. So I do want to say, I think one of the keys though is having good mentors around you at all times. I mean, if like you've heard this saying, like if you don't have a good mentor, go get one, right? Like go find good mentors. And I've been very fortunate to have a lot of mentors in my life show up at the exact time that I needed them. And selfishly, they think I probably gave them more than they did. But in reality, I took a lot more from them than they probably know I did. So I think those are some of the, some of my thoughts on the leadership, right? Like, don't be so quick to look elsewhere.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I think for a lot of our younger listeners, it's helpful to hear that. I mean, I think you and I can remember times, you're on a pile job, and, you're there to make sure the pile gets down the final driving criteria. And,
Yep.
it gets kind of old after the first 500 piles, right? And you're thinking,
Yeah.
I got
And
2,000
cold.
more, right? And my feet
Yeah.
are wet, right? And it's like, where's the end goal here, right? But, we go into
Right.
to make a difference, and that you definitely made your impact on the city's skyline, and that's really powerful. And I think that you say a really good thing about mentoring, because without our mentors, where are we, right?
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense.
I think people think that they go at it alone, and I would say even some of the billionaires in this world, who probably people are stand up to give them awards and put them on podiums and all this sort of thing, well, they still have a huge team of people behind them that have got them to where they're at, and no one goes at it alone. And I think having those mentors, having those folks who have your best interest in mind is something that is key. And really, that's how you develop your leadership, your dedication to your profession and your career. So yeah, I would say there's definitely those dark days when it's a Friday night, 6 o'clock on your birthday, and you're driving piles, sitting on a rig somewhere, and the last thing you want to be doing is freezing and standing there. But there are those are some of the magical moments that we think back to now, like, hey, think of the person I wouldn't be if I didn't have that in my mind, right?
Yeah,
So
that's true. I assume that wasn't theoretical, what you just said there, right?
no,
That's like it might have happened.
those are like that was like 7 years of Friday nights.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Oh man. So when you think about where your career is now, you're a principal, but you still are responsible for a lot of technical review and technical calculations and things of that sort. But a lot of what you do now is growing the careers of others. And think back at when you started, what are some of the things that you wish you knew then that you knew now? Like if you could see younger Art. I remember younger Art because I when you started.
You're right there with me. Yeah.
Exactly. What would you tell yourself, man?
I think something I've learned over time is to be a lot more patient and listen, right? I think I'm those who do know me know that I talk a lot. Like as my mother would say, I could talk the bark off a tree. And I still don't know what that means, but I don't think it's a good thing. But at the end of the day, like I've learned as someone who talks a lot to try and work on listening. And I think the younger self, my older self telling my younger self, like, hey, listen to your mentors. They have your best interests in mind. And be patient, think, listen, and before you react, like, don't be so emotional and so reactive, be more proactive. And those are the sort of things that proactiveness, I think, is something that I take serious now. And I'm not, we're not just talking career and
Hmm.
talking life in general,
Yeah.
right? You know, let's think about the future. Let's try to think 4 or 5 steps ahead. If you're playing a chess game, you're not going to want to wait to see what your opponent does and then start thinking about your moves. You're trying to think ahead. And I think these are the sort of things. It's funny. I think if you put me of 15 years ago in the same room, you'd notice, you'd probably be like, these are two entirely different people. And that should be the case, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have a family, you have children, you have life has been different, right? It's not what you expected, or it is what you expected, and things have changed. So
No, you're
um,
absolutely right. You always want to make sure that we're growing. I've heard some people say if you're
oh,
not
absolutely.
growing, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? And nobody wants to
Right.
do that. So I got to say,
Yeah.
Art, one of the things, it's many things. One of the things I really admire about you, working alongside you all these years, is that you're like super engaged and super active within the engineering community. You're always
Yep.
looking to give back. Can you just tell us a little bit more about, like, why is that important to you? And also, what are some of the things that you're doing? Like, why is it important to you? Why are you so active outside of your busy schedule at work and, of course, home? Like, why? What's your why?
So my that's actually a good question. I don't know if I necessarily know the answer as quickly as I would hope I would, but I think so. I love being involved. Like, I like being part of the industry, right? Like, I made it a conscious decision younger, in college, that I wasn't just gonna sit by and watch an ASCE meeting happen, or sit by and watch an engineering. When I was in my community college, we had an engineering team, that were a group that we met. I never liked sitting by and watch things pass me by. I like being in those groups, because really I felt that collaboration and acceptance, and things come together very well when you're working in that group mentality. And I like the team aspect. I like those aspects of it. I'd also say it allows us to know what our peers are doing, to know what our peers are thinking, and kind of, I want to say, be on the cutting edge of many things, or many decisions. I mean, wouldn't it be great to see, like, a New York Times article come out and already know about it, like, know about it ahead of time, like, just
So
know about these things. And I think a lot of that, being part of those groups and those teams, allows you to sort of things, whether it's ACEC, ASCE, ACE mentoring, things like that. And I think you'll be surprised. A lot of people look at these situations as, hey, this is taking time away from other things that I want to do.
mm,
But again, I look at it selfishly. I'm not taking time from me. I'm taking time from that. I'm taking time with people in those groups that I would never get to know, because I don't work with them, or they're work for a city agency or state agency that I don't interact with.
mhm.
And I'm getting to know them on a different level. I'm getting to spend time with them. I'm working to put together a panel discussion with them, and I get to hear their perspective, a perspective I've never heard before.
Yeah.
And it kind of puts me in a whole different mindset. Like, that's a good point. I like, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know that.
That's right.
Thank you for telling me. And these are the sort of things that I look at these groups, and whenever someone asks me, hey, can you help out with this, those are the 20 or so checklist items that go through my brain in 5 seconds. And I know, Jared, you're similar to me in that aspect, because I know we smell our own.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, those are the sort of things, like, I have more reasons to be part of those things than I do to not be part of those things.
Yeah.
And also, if you say no too many times, you're not going to get any more requests, right? So it's good, like, and as long as you're upfront and you manage those sort of things, and you put your priorities. So
Yeah.
but I will say, I will add that those who hear these things or know me, or say, maybe you do too much, like, I coach my kids in sports. I'm active in their life. I'm very active outside, but I plan my day down to the minute. right?
Yeah.
And I plan my times, and I plan my times to sit with my family and be with my family. Like I plan those sort of things. And again, it's stuff that I've started to learn. I'll always, for the rest of my life, I'll be working on, time management. Everyone will be, but
Yeah.
so those are also important items. Those are the things that really make me the person I am. Like that is absolutely serious. If I would say there would be a tough decision if I had to pick an engineering like group over
Oof.
a family activity. It
Oof.
would be a tough, and I'd have to handle that situation as is. I have an idea what the decision would go. Family would probably reign
Yeah.
supreme,
Hmm.
but you know, those are tough. Like I guess one way to avoid it is give me an award, and maybe I'll make sure I make it there.
There you go.
No, but no, that's the sort of. But those are the sort of things I think people should be asking themselves. Like you know, there's this amazing study by and I can't for Linda, I want to say Linda Vanderkamp. She had wrote a study about like time management,
Mm,
and she did a TED talk, and it's a pretty famous TED talk, and she just talks about how much time people waste. They just
wow.
waste.
Wow.
And one of the first things I do when I'm mentoring people is I lay out a time. They ask me the same question you just asked, like, how
Yeah.
do you do it? Like, how do you do all this stuff?
Yeah.
And I have them write a time diary,
Mm,
and you find out they're just like I remember doing one time with one project manager,
yeah.
and he lost 3 hours a day in the office, like just walking around and checking in with people. And it was, I remember he was complaining because he was on a job site, and he would come back to the office, and a typical day he'd go get a cup of coffee, and then, hey, I need to go see how Jim's doing, and then walk over to him and walk to this guy and walk to that. And by the time he added up all those 10-minute, 15-minute increments,
Yeah.
he was losing 3 hours. And I was like, there, you can have dinner with your wife at home. You don't need
Wow.
to like, what are you talking? You can't move that. You can't shift that 3 hours. You can't cut that 3 hours down to 30 minutes
Wow.
and be home in time. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people. Like I don't play video games. I don't do a lot of these other things.
Mhm.
I do like to watch movies and TV and stuff like that, but there's times that it's not important to me. So I think those are the sort of things that I take pretty serious. So hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. So
No, it's good stuff. I mean, the listeners, I'm learning as well. I mean, the reality is that you're going to make time for what's important, and if something's not important, you're not going to make time for it. And if you're
no,
not accounting for that, you're wasting a lot of time. So
right,
it's
right.
good stuff, Art. That's really good stuff. So we're going to take a moment here. It's a good moment to pause on. We'll come right back in a minute to close this one out with our career factor safety in segment. Stick around. All right, welcome back. It's time for our career factor safety in segment. In geotechnical engineering, just like many disciplines of engineering, it's important to incorporate a factor of safety into your design. But what about incorporating a factor of safety into your actual career? Today, of course, we're speaking with Art Alzamora. Art, I'd like to pick your brain for a minute on productivity. You're the leader
Sure.
in a large organization. You sit in a seat that honestly many engineers would aspire to. How do you decide what to work on each day? And when you have so many things you're responsible for, how do you figure that out and provide yourself a factor of safety against unproductivity? Because you don't have time to be unproductive.
Right. That's a good question, Jared. I think it's also a tough question. I'll go back to, we talked earlier that, my younger self and older self. I think if you asked me 2 years out of my college, I would believe that I was a master multitasker. Like I could do five things at one time. And that came from years working in short order cook and restaurants where you could cook multiple things and have different things cooking at different temperatures throughout. But as I've gotten older and more experienced, I've realized that there's really is no such thing as multitasking. What we refer to as multitasking a lot of time is on productivity.
Hmm.
And I think what I find and is when I work on a task and I stop that task, go to another task, and then go to another task and go to another task. I'm basically trying to work on four things at once. I'm not being productive and getting anything done. I'm actually losing time. In the long run, that the time suck is moving further and further and further.
Oh,
So a lot of times what I try to do is maybe the night before I go to bed or first thing early in the morning, I'm looking over my schedule a day or two in advance and seeing what calls, what meetings we have. which blocks of times I have. A lot of times I'm coordinating with my wife on bringing kids here and there and things like that. So what I do is I'll work with my team to help me identify what things we need to focus on first, or what was next in the queue, sort of thing, so I can really put all my time on one thing directly. And that's kind of how my day goes. That if someone comes in with, I mean, there's always going to be those last minute, like, hey, I need you to look at this, I need these sort of things to happen, I need you to jump on this call. Those things are going to happen, and hopefully you have enough as a contractor to say you have enough float in your schedule to to make up the time at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I really think it's really key for me to get input from others as to, what is important. I've made this joke before where I say it's like when I'm trying to wash dishes or do laundry at home, I do have to ask my wife, well, what do you want me to do first? Because what will make you more happy? Like, if I have a higher likelihood of getting one task done over getting both tasks done, which task do you really want done? Most times she'll say the laundry because she doesn't like to sort socks. So, and I don't mind doing that. So that's something, there's something very zen about sorting socks. So that's one of the things, like, I take that to heart, that, hey, sometimes I do need help from, one of my senior managers that I work with a lot, to say, hey, what do I need to focus on? What do you need me to make your day easier? Right. Because let's face it, no one works for us. We work for everybody. So
Exactly.
like really, they're managing up, they're helping me manage my time. So if I hope that makes sense, but
No, it does. It
like,
does.
yeah, so.
Well, Art, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for sharing all the great insights with us. You shared great information and advice. I know it's going to be helpful for our listeners. Question for you: where can the listeners find you? In your social media or email address? What's the best way for people to find out more about you?
Yeah, so I'd say I'm trying to get better at it. My 2021 resolution is LinkedIn. I'd say Arthur Alzamora on LinkedIn,
Okay.
or my email is first initial last name at Langan, LANGAN.com. I think it's pretty quick Google search. Most of all that contact info will pop up pretty quickly.
Excellent.
Yeah, and if you see me, please feel free to interrupt me and say hello, and ask me questions, whatever you like. Always looking to engage. So,
All right. Thank you, Art, for coming on. I really
great,
appreciate it.
great, thanks.
I hope you enjoyed the episode today. We would love to hear your feedback, comments, and or questions. Please feel free to go to geotechnicalengineeringpodcast.com, where you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, that being episode 19, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, we wish you the very best in all your geotechnical engineering endeavors. Peace.